Hey, this is Mike Rohde with the Sketchnote podcast, and today we wanted to do something different. We've done drawing of concepts for your visual library. Today I thought it would be fun to do some type drawing. There's a few things that I thought I would share, and I would just sort of wing it and see how this goes, and share the things that come to the top of my mind about trying type, because I do so much of it. It seemed like a good topic to get into as well as the other things. So what we're going to do is I'll clear the canvas, and one of the things that I think is helpful is to think about the different styles of type that you see. Now, one of the styles of type you may see is called serif type, and what that means is when you've got a letter form, it's got these little serifs off the edge. You can see I'm drawing a T here of serif type, and the way I would usually build those is just like you see here, and then I would often go in and just fill it in like this. You can see with the iPad it's a little bit rougher, but you get a pretty good idea of how that works. And then you can make it a little bolder by thickening up the lines there. It's pretty quick to do. If you want to compare that, so this is serif type, and that's nice for headlines and just for a change of pace from sans serif type. Now if I do a sans serif T, this is something that we taught in the book, the two-line method, you can see that there are no additional tidbits. It's just a real clean T. So you've got real clean edges, it's got sharp points at the end, you know, I've capped those off, but there's no little serifs on the end. And one of the benefits of having serifs, especially in type, is it can make it a little easier to read because the letters have edges, some sharp edges that you can catch your eye on. So this is the sans serif compared to the serif. Now, one of the things that you have to think about when you do serif type that you don't have to think about in sans type is you have to think about how do I produce the thickness, because on some edges there's thick and some there are thin. So for instance on an O, so that would be just a single line O. If you wanted to do that as serif type, you have to think about just thickening two of the sides instead of all of the sides. So you can see this is thicker. You can go in and now fill this in a little bit, like so. If you want to bold it up, you can sort of just come around, but you know, obviously this and this are much thinner than the outer edges here. So that's just something you can do. And then as you go and do other letters, you can do the same kind of thing. So for instance, here's an E. Now you do this, you follow the same thing. So you'll see that there's this pattern where it's thicker on the right and the left, but not on the top and the bottom. So here you would just add some space here. Maybe you could put another line. So still it's thin, but compared to the others, it's quite thick to thin. And the last thing you can do is you can come around here and you can do fun things like putting a little ball on the end. You may have seen that when you've seen typography with a little tail or a ball right there. So that's something you can do there. There's two ways you can do an A in serif type. So let's start with the ball just for fun. There's one that looks like this, and you come like that. And again, remember we're thickening up just one side of it. So you can thicken up the backbone over here a little bit, and I can even add a little more like that. And then do that again on the front of the A, and then come in and just add your thicknesses. So that's a really quick way to do an A. There's another way to do an A for serif type, and that is to do it like this. You may have seen that too, where it's a much simpler form. And then again, you just go in and you add the thickness on the side that needs it. Do that again over here, and then just a little thickness here on the other sides. So that's a real easy way to go. For numbers, it's the same kind of thing. You can start with a 1, let's say, and with serif type you would have something down here, and then you would probably thicken this up, let that go off, and then fill it in. This can be as simple as just a bar and a bar. Maybe you can even add some detail like that. You can have a little fun and put a little curl on there if you want, although don't make it into a 7. So there's that option as well. So there's some tips to help you with that. One thing you can note for doing this letter form style is to think that this is roughly about half the height of a full letter. So for instance, if I go in and let's erase this A right here, I'll erase the 1 too. Go back to the pen. If I were to continue these invisible baselines, it's roughly about half. So if I were to do the T here, it would be something like this, and then this would come down. Maybe it's a little bit shorter than half, but you get the idea that These are roughly about half, and they call that, this is called the X height, and that's the height from the baseline to the top of the lowercase roughly. So if you ever see that term, and what that means is if the X height is high, it can be a lot easier to read. So if you do these letters closer, let's say I just erase this top part. Let's just make the X height a little bit higher for the lowercase. Now I've drawn, this here, I've got the serifs on there. So the proportion, this is where the O proportion was there. If I move it down here, this space right here is a lot tighter. So it makes it a little bit easier to read because now your lowercase is a little bit taller compared to the capitals. So that's something to think about as well. And I think probably the best thing to do would be to go out and look at a place like Font Shop. They have some great samples of serif types. You can look at all kinds. A couple to maybe look at could be this one called Bedoni. It's an old font, but it's beautiful. It's very extreme. So the thins are very thin and the thicks are very thick. So that's an interesting one to look at. Another one that you can look at that's really beautiful that you probably see on Apple ads is called Garamond. Also an old typeface, but good for reference. So go out and check out some of these serif fonts and just study them. And as you have time and you practice your type work, have one of those, maybe print one of those out or load it up on your iPad and get a piece of paper and just practice recreating those letter forms until you get really good at it. And then when you get into a situation where you're actually doing these serif fonts or you want to use them, again, you've got this library of characters, a lot like the library of objects that we're teaching you to do, that you can pull up from memory. So thanks again for coming and watching the Sketchnote podcast. Look forward to seeing you in future episodes with more interviews and drawing techniques and critiques. So thanks a lot for joining me, and we'll talk to you again soon.